and welcome to the Crafty Historian Podcast, episode number 33. My name is Rachel and I am studying for a Masters in Public History at the University of York. Very welcome back to anyone who has been before, and hello to anyone who is new. Yes, today is the 28th of February. If you don't know, I'm currently running my podcasts on a monthly schedule just so I can focus on really getting the work into my degree at the moment, because that's kind of what I'm here for. But yes, it's February. This is our February episode, and yeah, if you want to find me on Ravelry, I am RachelRavenclaw, and on Instagram I am Ravenclaw Rachel. We also have a Ravelry group which you can find if you search in the groups tabs for the Crafty Historian Podcast. Feel free to send me messages and ask any questions. I will be happy to answer them. First things first, I am wearing today my basic blue cardigan knit in Serdar Harrop tweed because it's actually cold again here. I got really concerned earlier in the week because it was suspiciously warm, but I am able to wear my hand knits again and I am happy about that. It's not time for spring yet. And underneath it I am wearing an Agnes top by Tilly and the Buttons in this sort of floral jersey. I apologise, I have only just got my voice back after a week of having nothing, so if I sound a bit gravelly I do apologise. Little bit of further admin before we start. She says, looking for what she's looking for. It's behind you. I have released my second pattern, which you may have seen if you follow me on Instagram, but I have released my Sock Set Shawlette, which needs a good reblock. But this is it. It's a lovely sort of thin, sort of, not a semicircle, it's a crescent-esque shawl, but it's nice and thin, but it's light for the spring, and it's got these lovely eyelets and stripe section, and it is designed for a sock set. So for those of you who don't know, a sock set, you get 100 grams of 4-ply yarn in the main colour and usually 20 grams in a contrast colour. I have designed it so that it uses those measurements, but they don't necessarily have to come in a sock set. You could have a 100 gram skein and some leftovers, or a mini skein to do your contrast. My lovely testers had lots of different variations on this, and I am incredibly grateful to everyone who has bought it already. But I will leave the link down below if anyone else would like to get a copy. So if I just put it on like this is how I wear it usually. So you've got a nice sort of cuddly puddle there, and then I tend to tie the ends in and tuck them into my coat. And yeah. So this is the Sock Set Shawlette, and it is available on Ravelry. As I said, I will leave a link down below if you are interested. So yeah, thank you again to anyone who's bought it already. I was able to go and buy myself a cauliflower because, you know, student life. But yeah, I think we are going to hop straight on in to some knitting, and I have been a fairly monogamous knitter this month, so much so that I have 2 finished objects for you. I know, right? So the first one that I finished were my Mallard socks. So these are West Yorkshire spinners, my sock blockers. These are West Yorkshire spinners in the Mallard colourway in 4-ply, and I used a Cygnet rich 4-ply in this greeny colour for heels and toes, and I knit these on 2.5mm 9-inch circular needles, and I really enjoyed it. Then it cuffed down with a heel flap and gusset. I could have done with a longer heel flap. I'm sitting here looking at them going, yeah, no, I could have done with a longer heel flap. But yeah, 56 stitches, the 2x2 rib at the top. I am very happy with them. I've still got a couple of ends to weave in because of course, but these are a lovely pair of finished socks to go into my collection. Yes. I've named these on my Ravelry project page my York socks, because if you don't know, I think I may have talked about it before, but perhaps not for a while. York campus, so the University of York campus, has a plastic bottomed lake. It actually has two, because East and West campus both have a lake. But because of this, the waterfowl outnumber the students. So you cannot go anywhere on campus without seeing a duck. So these are my York socks to remind me of the ducks that chased me on many occasions. So yes, finished object number 1. Very happy. Just got to let future Rachel do some weaving in, which we all know is not going to happen very soon. My second finished object is in fact another one that needs a lot of ends weaving in. Can you guess? It is my Captain Marvel jumper. Ta-da! I cast it off last night and I'm so happy with it. All I need to do now is weave in some ends and maybe give it like just a soak and then pat it down and see if that can even some things out. But otherwise, I have a jumper. There we go, there's the second sleeve. Does that help? Does that help? No, not really. There we go. Ta-da! So, this is the brick pattern by Clare, I think. The base of the jumper is. It's just a simple DK raglan. I think it's written for worsted, but I did it in DK. But I drafted a pattern for the colour work. So I sat there with some grid paper and did this myself. Yeah. Otherwise, I've knit it to an oversized jumper, and so it's going to be nice and thick and warm and snuggly. Got 1x1 rib on the cuffs and on the hem down here, and on the neckband. And yeah, I might have to do something about this neckband. I didn't pick it up correctly, so now it's folding a bit. I just need to crochet it down a little. But otherwise, I am very happy with this. Pretty much after the raglan increases, I gave up and didn't look at the pattern again. So I didn't do any waist shaping, and I improvised the shaping on my sleeves, which I realised at one point I wasn't decreasing quick enough, so then I decreased rather rapidly. But they're quite nice to have some flappy movement, she says, wearing a flappy cardigan. However, I wish these ones were tight around the wrist, which this one will be. So yeah. Captain Marvel will be wearable to go and see the film next Friday. Whether or not all of the ends are woven in is another matter entirely. I'm going to prioritise the ones that are hanging off over this mess. I'm so cruel to my future self. But, you know, who cares? I got a lovely jumper out of it. So this is knit out of some stash that I had in Stylecraft Life 4-ply. It was the one that's got 25% wool as well as the acrylic in there. So it's got some snuggliness to it too. Yeah. Jumper done. I mentioned on the previous podcast that when I sent a picture to my mother, she asked me whether it was for me or for my bear. I said, well, it's for me. And I said on the podcast, I now want to knit one for my bear. Well, I don't have to, because my mother knit one for my bear. So for those of you who have been watching for a long time, please welcome back my furry co-host. It's Jane in her matching jumper. It's not quite as detailed, but you get the idea. And we're going to be jumper buddies because that's the sort of person I am. I mean, I am also wearing jeans, so you know we can be completely matching. I love my mother. This is just fantastic. Oh, bless her. So yeah, 2 Captain Marvel jumpers, one knitted by me, one knitted by my mother. But yeah. So that's going to go down there. Jane might actually decide to sit up here for a little bit, just for a cuddle. She has occasionally podcasted with me before. I used to sit with all my teddies and podcast, but I'm sat in a chair now. I'm an actual grown-up and I have a chair, like an armchair. But yeah, those are my finished objects. I finished the jumper last night. I stayed up past my bedtime to do it, and I'm really happy with it. But that does mean, as I was sort of monogamously getting on with it, my other projects haven't had that much of a look in, so I've only finished that square I was working on with my Cozy Memories blanket. My shawl has not been picked up again, I don't think. And my other pair of socks, which are living in this Winnie the Pooh bag that I made from some Cath Kidston fabric. Yes, so these are my Clark socks, and I haven't even done one pattern repeat yet. But I've cast them on again, which means I can't use these needles for something else, which is what I would have done. But I've got a nice cuff going. This here is a Progress Keeper by Hannah of the Corner Craft, and it's BB8's head, which I got from Nora George Yarns when they did a collaboration, not last Christmas, Christmas before. And that's just to show me which side is the start side, essentially, where I cast on. But yes, I've got my 2x2 rib done. I'm starting the cable pattern. This is Wendy Rome 4-ply, if you don't remember. And that's what the pattern looks like. It's an excellent cable pattern. I really enjoyed knitting the first one, so hopefully I can zoom through the second one, because these will need an extra sort of soak and soften because they're a bit stiff at the moment. But yes, very happy with them. I just had other things that I could finish quicker. So I finished the Mallard West Yorkshire Spinners socks quicker because they were just stockinette in the round, therefore I could take them to when I was out with people, whereas I can't really take the cables because that requires thinking. Yes, those are my whips and my foes. I have a couple, oh no, I've got one more whip. I cast on a new design. Sorry, Jane. But I'm thinking this might be a bit too small. We'll see. But this is just some DK 2x2 rib. I'm looking at doing some fingerless mitts. But yeah, I think I need a few more stitches. Oh no, maybe not. Maybe not actually. So yes, that's in progress. I think I cast it on a couple of days ago, so not much has been going on. But this will be a new design that I am working on. Yeah. We'll see how it goes. We will see how it goes. And this is another Cygnet Woolrich, not 4-ply, it's a Cygnet Woolrich DK. So it's a 75% wool, 25% nylon, but in DK. And it's really affordable, so would recommend if you can find some. It's very nice. So that is that. I want to cast on another pair of just plain stockinette socks. I think I will do them on my 9-inch circulars again, just because it made it really easy for me to, because of how I knit, to hold and just go anyway. And I think, oh, there we go. I think I'm going to cast on West Yorkshire Spinners in their local yarn shop day colourway from a couple of years ago. And yeah, I think I also need to cast on a pair of socks for my mother for Mother's Day. And she wants a version of the Simple Skip socks, which I knit a pair of in the summer for my friend Liv. And they are very simple, but she wants them in the grey, but I'm thinking I could also use the grey for toes and heels for these as well. So 2 socks will be cast on in the future, and I'm also currently trying to decide if I want to cast on a garment or not, and whether or not, I'm trying to reconcile with myself, do I care how many whips I have or not? Because at the moment I have 3 plus my blanket, and you know what, at the moment I kind of do just want to quote Caroline of Duddenett, cast on with reckless abandon. So I reckon the cast on-itis is going to be a thing that happens. Two pairs of socks, potentially a jumper. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. But yes, definitely at least I need a vanilla pair of socks on the go. Because, yeah, things are happening. What else have I been doing? I have actually done some scrapbooking, which is low-key shocking because I don't think I've done like proper scrapbooking since, I don't know, June, July. But I thought, you know what, I will make a start on 2019, fresh start, see where it goes. So I bought myself a new folder. I do my scrapbooks in A4 ring binders. This one is from WH Smith, purely because ring binders are cheaper than scrapbook albums and you can move things around. This one has this nice elastic to it, which I appreciate. And I am actually up to date with, well, I need to print some more photos, but of the photos that I've printed, I've definitely completed January. And I haven't got much for February. So I've done pretty much all the photos I have printed. So here we go. Part of this is reminding me to actually go and print some photos or take photos. So these are trading card sleeves, which I use instead of Project Life sleeves, just because these are cheaper and they fit inside the A4 ring binders. So as you can see, I was not very good at taking pictures, but I've put some journaling in there. I talked a little bit about my knitting down here and my weaving that I showed last time. Had some cake and food. I still need to do some writing about our potluck that we ran and about Trunky Doo and the Banana Bread Championship. So I haven't done the journaling for this. These are postcard collecting sleeves, which work for 4x6s. And then that's February's title page, including my design. That's my friend Liv down there. She's wearing the Sock Set Shawlette. There we go, no reflection there. You can see my lovely friend Liv. We bought some hot chocolate, and there's me asleep in bed with a book. And I've got a couple of photos printed to scrapbook about. So me in my jumper with one sleeve, the release of my pattern, and going out for hot chocolate with someone. But apart from that, I've got very few photos from February. I just need to sort through them and see what I want to print out and put into here. I also went back and I've done a few things in my 2018 album, but I can't quite, oh no, it's just I don't want to go and pull it out and try and find which ones I've done. At the moment I'm just sort of dipping in and out, trying to tidy up what hasn't been done yet, including Christmas. So I did some Christmas pages the other day. I'm just like, yeah, that's some scrapbooking for you. So I do my scrapbooking. It's based on a project lifestyle, but I thoroughly recommend it to anyone who potentially suffers from any form of anxiety or depression. Scrapbooking is very good because it reminds you that good things have happened. Even if it's going back several years and you're finding photos of your last holiday or something, it reminds you that life is good. So even if you're just printing out your photos and sticking them in a book and writing down what's happened, sometimes that can be enough. So I would recommend scrapbooking to anybody. Give it a go. See what happens. You don't have to be as extra as me. So yes, that's that. Sewing wise, I haven't really picked up my sewing machine since I finished my costume that I was doing. So I mentioned on last episode that I was sewing a costume for our dance event. I made a Snow White costume, which I will hopefully insert a picture of here. Because the costume I have to show you is now very wrinkly, but this is the sewing that I did. So I did pretty much an ankle length 3/4 circle skirt in this yellow cotton fabric. It's, yeah, the waistband's all like wrinkly. But it's a 3/4 circle skirt, so it wasn't going to take anyone out. It's got, well, a concealed-ish zip. Like there. And it's machine hemmed. I think this is the first time I've machine hemmed something that isn't jersey. But yes, I think this is the first time I have machine hemmed a skirt in years. I don't like the way it looks, but I was running out of time. But it's a big swath of fabric, which was excellent for spinning in. It just needs an iron. And then I made my Snow White top as well. So this was a blue t-shirt that I had but wasn't going to wear much out of. I attached this collar, which, yeah, I'm not sure what to say. It's interfaced, it's hand stitched on. It looks a bit wrinkly here, but because it's a jersey top, it stretches out and lies flat. The sleeves I am kind of proud of. So what I did, you might be able to see here, I slashed into the original top sleeves. I'll turn it inside out. And I then attached, I had a scrap of one of either mum's or my grandma's old tops as well, but their sleeves are slightly bigger. So I cut out the sleeves of that and tacked them inside and, yeah, overlapped, sewed in where it was. So it's not perfect, but the effect is pretty damn good enough, I'd say. Yeah, it's not neat, it's not tidy, but I think, well, I know everyone could tell what it was. It was recognisable enough. And I've got, my mum's best friend has a 5-year-old daughter, and she's asked me to come round and play princesses with her after seeing me dressed up as this. So now I get to go and play princesses, which I haven't done since I was about 8. And I have a very universal costume now. Like, you can go as Snow White pretty much anywhere. But yes, that is the sewing. I forgot in my intro to talk about the Christmas gift cow. I didn't get round to talking to Rosie, but I drew for a random winner. I put in a picture here of who it was, because I can't remember. It was a random number generator, and I will put next to it the post and the person who made the post and made the object as a gift. Picture, yeah. But also what I've got for you is a skein from the York Makery. This is her hand-dyed yarn, and she's sadly closing, so I went to say goodbye and thank you, and I got you a skein of, it's called Hermia, and so it's this lovely pink and green speckles in a 75% BFL, 25% nylon. So let me know, send me a message if this is you, and I can send it out to you. But yes, sadly the York Makery will be closing at the end of March. I don't know what's going to happen to her yarn, whether or not it's going to be a different business or not. But yeah, I'm slightly sad, but this should hopefully find a home to you from York. That's that. And finally, I have a small history section. As I mentioned in my previous episode, I'm looking into histories of people of colour, which is obviously something that is rich and varied, but no one ever really talks about. So I have chosen today to focus on a lady called Lubna or Labana of Cordoba. She was a mathematician from the 10th century, and so she was a Muslim. So Cordoba at this point was part of al-Andalus. You see, I know these things and I don't realise that people don't. Al-Andalus was governed by, so this is the Iberian Peninsula, so what is now Spain and Portugal. Between the year 711 to 1492, it was ruled by, they call them the Moors. So they were ruled by Muslims, and they had the most amazing society, and I desperately want to go and visit some of their sites to see how they convey that public history to the past. For example, Alhambra is the final Muslim stronghold, and it's down in Granada. Is it Granada? I believe it's Granada, but it's in the south of Spain, and it is the most stunning building. Beautiful Islamic art all over it, in like it's mosaics, it's filigree, it's the images are beautiful, and it's part of that thing you want to go and appreciate that. But I've suggested this to my mother and she said no. So when I grow up, I would like to go and visit this beautiful place of history where they held out against Isabella of Castile and Ferdinand of Aragon. Or is it the other way around? I can't remember. Isabella and Ferdinand of Castile and Aragon. Yeah. Is it Isabella of Aragon? No, it must be Isabella of Castile. Isabella and Ferdinand, parents of Catherine of Aragon. But we're not talking about them, they're far too Eurocentric. We're talking about al-Andalus. So from 711 it was invaded by the Umayyad Caliphate. So the Umayyads, they were Muslim, and they ruled over Christians and Jews in the area. It was one of the only places in the medieval world where Jews were at least tolerated, and they made up 5% of the population, which, considering most of the medieval world was horrifically anti-Semitic, and massacres were not infrequent. There was one in York in 1191, which they burnt them all. Or they decided to burn themselves because they didn't want to face the mob, which was just devastating. But yes, I'm getting sidetracked. So yes, the Muslims ruled over the Christians and the Jews, and they were classified as, I think it's Dima. I can't pronounce it correctly, and I apologise, but Christians and Jews were seen to be under the protection of the Caliphate. They had to pay a tax, which the name I've forgotten, but otherwise it was a relatively tolerant society. They were allowed to coexist. They were seen as lesser if they weren't Muslim, but people did convert. So if they were Iberian born and traditionally seen as Christian, they did convert, and yeah, there was this sort of interchange and acculturation of cultures, and it was a very culturally rich area and time period, which is dramatically understudied, and outside of academia I don't think very many people make much of it. But yes, that's al-Andalus in a nutshell. If you want to look it up, I really do. It's a fascinating society. But this, I'm looking at it from Labana of Cordoba. So she was a woman, a Muslim woman, mathematician of the 10th century. So we're talking the late 10th century. I think we're talking about the 960s, 970s here. And she became secretary for the Caliph al-Hakam II, who reigned between 961 and 976, and born in 915, who was also a really cool person. So he was the Caliph, the Caliph of Cordoba. So we're into the Cordoba Caliphate, the Cordoba Caliphate by now. They went through several different caliphates. The Umayyads were the first. Cordoba Caliphate was a little bit, it was one of the later ones. But this sort of caliphate was seen as the golden age. It was al-Hakim had a relatively stable reign, and he developed some agricultural methods, and he had a stable economy, and he had a relative peace with the Catholic nations to the north of him. He openly kept a male harem. I can't remember how to pronounce that correctly, I apologise, but he openly kept a male one, so he was openly gay. He didn't have his first child until he was 46, and part of that we think is because, basically interpreted from the sources, the fact that he had kept a male harem. He wasn't interested in women, but obviously the pressures of rule means you have to have an heir, so he got himself a wife and had 2 children, one of which died and the other inherited. Just typical. But he was also a massive patron of knowledge. So he had a huge library, some estimate around 500,000 volumes inside this library. Others have suggested that that's a misinterpretation and it's 500 leaves or 500 books with multiple leaves inside each book. I don't know the ins and outs of all of this, but he clearly had a desire to collect knowledge. So he ran translation programs from Latin and Greek into Arabic, and this is how we preserve many of the traditional Greek texts that weren't, because a lot of the time the Greeks didn't translate them into the Latin, or they did, but they didn't survive. So the survival of a lot of the ancient texts are down to Arabic translations. But yes, Labana, she was born as a slave, but she has incredibly adept at maths and famous for her able to write grammar and her originality, and she eventually worked her way up to become secretary for al-Hakam. And so she was integrated into the court at Cordoba, and she was in charge of writing and translating some of these manuscripts. There's been some research done that there were about 170 other women active in the sort of Cordoba court, and the surrounding areas, which indicates potentially that literacy levels in al-Andalus in this period was actually pretty high for women, which is incredibly unusual. But yeah, it's something that I thought might be interesting to some of you. The fact that it's medieval, which is one of my specialities, but it's also something that's not talked about. It's a relatively stable period, whereas most medieval is touted for its wars. We've got a woman who's pitching up and doing something amazing, an intelligent woman, person of colour. We don't have any surviving images or any attributes for her work, but she is documented to have been existed. And a potential LGBT political leader of this time, and the fact that it was tolerated in a relatively tolerant society. I really do believe that sort of the Umayyads and the Moors in Spain should be studied a little bit more widely. So if you would like to look something up on that or talk, I am sure I can go back to some, because I studied this in first year, I can go back and have a look at some of my sources and see if I can find anything interesting for people. If you've got any suggestions of people of colour or histories outside of the Eurocentric or Western-centric sphere, leave them below. I'm thinking I want to look a little bit next at Chinese dynasties, because that's not something I've never done before. I know a friend who did a module on samurais, so I might look at what he did, see if he can give me some ideas about that. But there's also a vast wealth of other histories. If you just search women in history, and you can usually filter some things down. I got recommended, I ended up on a website for Muslim history, and some of those women that were on there, they had a page about, or an article about women, and it was amazing. These women were incredible. But yeah, I think that's all I have for you for today. Let me know what you think, and like, subscribe, the usual jargon. But yes, thank you very, very much, and hopefully I hope to see you at the end of March, and I hope you have a very lovely knitting month until then. Bye!